In today's video, we have a mix of some of the best stories from over at entitledstories.com. Let's jump right in. Entitled Woman Pulls the Emergency Brake on a Train. About 15 years ago, my husband and I had a Karen experience we will never forget. We had gone to downtown Chicago on the train to visit the Museum of Science and Industry for the day. On the way home, there were two trains leaving that we could have taken. One was the Express, leaving at 5:25. The Express only stopped at a few of the stops and skipped the rest. The local train left at 5:35 and stopped at all the stops along the line. We got on the Express because it stopped at our stop, which was towards the end of the line. We're sitting in the train car and the train crew announces each station's stop and the next stop as we are going along. We see a woman get up and start walking towards the conductor. She's got the "I want to speak to your manager" haircut and other markings of the wild Karen. She goes up to the conductor and says something like, "Is this train stopping at Willowbrook? I need to get off at Willowbrook." This was 15 years ago, so it's not exact, but it is what I remember. The conductor turns to her and says, "Mom, this is the express train, we do not stop at Willowbrook. You'll have to get off at the next stop and call someone from the station or take a taxi to Willowbrook if you need to get your car." She starts screaming, "No! I need to get off at Willowbrook. You need to stop this train now." The conductor says, "Mom, we cannot stop this train, it is the express. You'll need to get off at the next stop." Hearing this, Karen freaks out and starts screaming, "I will stop this train." She eyes the emergency brake. Sensing what she is about to do, the conductor says, "Mom, if you pull that brake it is a felony and you will be arrested." Karen shrieks, but it's an emergency. As she pulls the emergency cord, the train lurches as the emergency brake engages. Karen starts walking towards the door of the train car screaming, "Open this door now." The conductor says, "Mom, I cannot open this door, we are not at a station. You have stopped this train when there is not an emergency. Now we need to wait for the police." Karen screams, "Open this door now." The conductor gets on his radio and asks for backup and for the police to be called. Karen continues to shriek, "Open this door, I need my car. Let me out." A few minutes later, police arrive on scene, lights and sirens flashing. The conductor opens the train door. As soon as the door opens, Karen makes a run for it. The conductor says to the cops, "That's her, the one who pulled the brake. Stop her." The cops chase after Karen and I don't know quite what happened next, as I couldn't see from my seat on the train. However, as the train started moving a few minutes later, I did get a good glimpse of Karen sitting in the back of a squad car. And that's the story of how one entitled Karen inconvenienced a whole trainload of people, maybe even two, if she delayed the other train, because she got on the wrong train. Stealing my gas is going to cost you. Should have just paid for your own gas. My neighbor is a cheapskate, even cheaper than most of us in the trailer park. I once threw away a couch that the dog had explosive diarrhea on and I caught him dragging the couch away and putting it in his trailer. There's being frugal and then there's being stupid. Speaking of stupid, I work lawn care, so I'll keep a lawnmower and can of gas on the back of my truck so I can go cut lawns. My cheap neighbor thinks that my gas can is fair game, because it's not locked up, so it must be free, his words. He kept putting my gas in his truck. So I put some sugar in the gas can and sat back to watch the show. Of course, my neighbor stole the gas can again and put it in his truck again. Now he's wondering why his truck won't start. Serves him right. Should I tell him about the sugar? Probably best I keep that fact to myself. Hoa, I'm not a part of tries to poison my tree. I live in a subdivision that is controlled by a Hoa. I'm live in one of the very few homes that is old enough to not have to be under their thumb thanks to my parents' good thinking. I inherited their home about 7 years back, but still, they want to cause trouble. We have an admittedly fairly large tree in the front yard. It's deciduous, so around fall, autumn, the leaves go everywhere. My daughter, 6, loves to play in them, so I don't bother much with cleaning them up. It's my house, why would I? But the Hoa started harassing us over the past couple of years to cut it down. Even going as far as to catch my wife on her morning runs to hound her about it. We don't even fall under their jurisdiction. I don't know as what they're doing counts as harassment, but it's sure starting to feel like it. I think they were tracking when she leaves our house, but I can't prove it. She's changed the time she goes out for runs from 6 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. back to 6 a.m. and even to 5:30 a.m., but somehow one of the main council members of the Hoa is always out there to harass her about the tree. It was ridiculous at this point, and I don't know how they know when she's out and about. It's a quiet street, but it's not like she makes heaps of noise. It all came to a head last weekend when my wife was in the front yard with my daughter. She left to go turn the sprinklers on for our daughter to play in. The tap for the sprinklers is around the side of the house, so she was gone no more than a few minutes, but when she came back the council member that had been following her was talking to our daughter. Naturally she was wondering why this stranger to our daughter was talking to her and ran up to confront him. He claimed he was just being friendly and introducing himself to our daughter. We had been deliberately keeping him away from her because of his behavior around my wife, so it wasn't ideal, but he left. Later that night, at dinner our daughter asked us what herbicide was. I explained to her that it kills plants, you used it in gardens. It turns out that he had asked her to convince us to kill the tree. He wanted her to go into our shed and look to see what poisons we had in the shed, or at least that's mostly what we could make out from our daughter. I think he meant for her to bring him one of ours so he didn't use one we didn't have. A toxin report on the tree would catch him out immediately. I've since put an additional numerical lock on the shed, instead of just the key one, but I can't believe he was trying to get our daughter to check our shed that's full of dangerous items over a goddamn tree. Soldier decides to make his own dress code. This was way back in the day, when I was in the Air Cadets, like the Army Cadets but for Air Force. Our squadron were known for being a bit of a rough around the edge type group, low socioeconomic, lots of problem kids, you name it. I kept to myself a bit, it wasn't my thing, but I had to be there. The MC wasn't on my part, but someone in my intake. Around 6 months in, there was a really rowdy night, lots of junk from the canteen, who knows. But a bunch of boys got food all over their dress uniforms, which is really difficult to hide stains on. During the uniform check, in front of the whole squadron, the warrant officer called out one boy we'll call Joshua. Josh was a troublemaker, but also a funny bloke. I liked him a lot, and this was one of the solidifying moments of his character to me. The WO pulled him out of rank to make an example of him. The usual this is what not to do, try harder, embarrassing to your country, but one specific sentence clearly stood out to Josh: I'd rather you wore nothing than this. You can imagine where this goes next. The next week, Josh turns up in his camos, no shirts, he is half naked walking around all night, attending the lectures as normal. WO doesn't say a word. Dress check comes up and WO is nowhere to be seen. The flight sergeant took over for the night and barely gives him a nod. Never saw WO ever give a lecture on uniform publicly ever again, and Josh was a hero for at least until the next intake. I sometimes wonder what happened to him. I secretly hope he's a WO now harassing kids in the same way. Like today's stories? Read more at entitledstories.com and submit your own stories too. You might see your story in a future video.